If you missed this week's hottest news in video games, Nintendo has finally officially announced the next edition to the Switch 2. Of course, as somebody who grew up on Nintendo and plays the Switch on a weekly basis, I am absolutely thrilled at the announcement of being able to see the larger display, much improved ergonomics, and that wonderful splash of color that excites me in ways that nothing else can. But with all that excitement, I'm disappointed in one aspect of the new console, and that's the name. So, if we look back to late 2012, Nintendo released the Wii U, a console which only sold 13.56 million units, making it the worst-selling piece of hardware from Nintendo in the company's history. If we forget about the Virtual Boy, don't worry, we can and we will forget about the Virtual Boy. The GameCube, which was beloved by many, including myself, was considered to be a flop when it was compared to the other consoles of that era in the 6th generation, the PlayStation 2 and the original Xbox. But even that sold quite a few more units than the Wii U at a pretty solid 21.74 million. So, why did the Wii U fail to sell units? It wasn't only one factor that led to poor sales, but a combination, of course. To kick things off, we saw a major lack of third-party support for the console. The Wii U was considerably weaker than the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One, which were released 1 year after the Wii U, and they boasted incredible graphical quality in comparison. The Wii U was a small HD upgrade over the Wii is what I would call it. With that, it was very difficult to port games over to it, and anything that did make it over was 100% an inferior product. If we look at Call of Duty Ghosts on the Wii U, it struggled compared to the PlayStation 4 counterpart, which boasted far superior textures, lighting, and performance, which, even for that era of console, it was a big step up over the Wii U. There are some artifacts due to high-speed gameplay footage being difficult to encode at times in the footage that we've got here, but we can see a clear difference in quality between the systems that were a part of the same era. This is all the 6th generation console. If the Wii U can't compete, what incentive is there to provide games for it, which then starts a vicious, self-destroying cycle of developers not wanting to put games on the device, so the install size remains small, so more developers don't care to bring games over, so on and so forth. Luckily for Nintendo, they haven't had an issue with the Switch growing its install base, even though the hardware is lower spec than any other current generational system right now. We will talk more about the strengths of the Switch in a moment. Let's focus back on what made the Wii U a poor console, which next we're going to talk about the lack of a system seller. This might actually be one of the biggest things. So, software sells hardware, which sells software. Sure, we saw New Super Mario Bros. U, which features everybody's favorite mustachioed plumber, Mario, but that alone isn't a system seller. Nintendo Land, brand new IP from Nintendo. The only other thing at launch for the Wii U that was first party. We saw Zombie U, Assassin's Creed 3, Sonic and All-Stars Racing Transformed, Darksiders 2, Tekken Tag Tournament 2, Call of Duty Black Ops 2. There's a lot of 2s here, funny enough. Rabbids Land, FIFA 13. Wow, that was a long time ago. And a handful of other titles provided a large pool of games to kick off the console's release. But for a lot of those games, they weren't actually exclusive to the Wii U, and they actually previously came out on other consoles in that generation in the months leading up to the release of the Wii U, so there was really no strong reason for someone to buy the hardware. Nintendo hardware sells because Nintendo releases strong games. Wii U owners had to wait until March of the following year for the release of Game & Wario to get a first-party title, which isn't up everyone's alley. It certainly wasn't up mine. A few more months went by, and in July of 2013, we did see Pikmin 3 make its arrival on the Wii U, which Pikmin, fairly large yet niche series for Nintendo, but still, having so few titles from Nintendo and not seeing the incredible likes of Zelda, Mario Kart, and Smash Brothers really didn't help things for the Wii U. Speaking of Zelda, Wind Waker HD arrived nearly a year after the Wii U's launch, alongside a specially themed edition of the console, and it wasn't even a new game. It was an incredible piece of art from the developer, but no new adventures to go on didn't put much faith in the Wii U. Worse, Breath of the Wild, initially meant for the Wii U, ended up being delayed and delayed and delayed until the launch of the Switch in 2017, which further awakened the appeal of the Wii U. But Even with the Switch's limited hardware, it ran much better and looked incredible on the Switch when compared to the Wii U. Basically, for the Wii U owners, myself included, we waited 5 years for a Zelda game. 5 years. It is always possible that Nintendo may have released Breath of the Wild much earlier, had the Wii U been a critical hit, but it's actually great that they didn't, because it gave the Switch an incredibly strong launch and it showcased the functionality of the Joy-Cons oh so wonderfully. It's important that your first-party games play with the gimmicks of the console, and Nintendo almost always has a gimmick at play, which is not a bad thing, never is. So it showcased the strength of the Switch, which leads us to talk about the branding. The Wii U marketed poorly. A big part of that was a failure to communicate what it actually was. At the time, social media was not as dominant as it is today, making it harder for Nintendo to directly engage with consumers. Without clear messaging, many casual gamers assumed that the Wii U was just an add-on for the Wii, rather than an entirely new console. The Wii branding itself hurt more than it helped, as people thought that they could just buy the new gamepad controller and use it with their existing Wii. Others were confused. Was this a home console or a handheld like the Nintendo DS? Nintendo's marketing focused heavily on the gamepad, but it never sold that concept well enough. Unlike the Wii's motion controls, which were instantly understandable and revolutionary, damn, the code name for the Wii was Revolution, the Wii U gamepad did not provide a compelling enough reason to exist. It was a bulky, underutilized, expensive addition that lacked a true system-selling feature. While some games used it creatively, like managing your inventory screens or seeing a map while you still had your game on the TV, it never justified its price or necessity. The Switch, on the other hand, has a clear gimmick, seamless TV to handheld gaming, and that was immediately understandable to consumers. It was appealing, and it showcased what was possible with a Nintendo handheld after the 3DS. My vote, for a long time, as far as names goes, has been to see the Switch 2 named the Super Switch. As silly as that may sound, this would pay homage to the Super Nintendo Entertainment System, or the Super NES, or the SNES, whatever you'd like to call it. Nintendo is very much a company that caters to an audience that is filled with nostalgia. Somebody hears about the new Pokemon game or a Mario Kart, and childhood memories rush to them. Whether that's Pokemon Blue for the Game Boy or Pokemon X from the 3DS, these long-living franchises, they sell hardware, and that in turn sells more software. Calling the new console the Super Switch would have brought forth similar feelings of nostalgia, though admittedly for only a much older audience, but that would have been nostalgia bait nonetheless. Would have been really cool. Being able to bust out a limited edition color scheme in the Super NES color palette would also have been really cool. Nothing prevents Nintendo from still doing this, of course. We did see the new Nintendo 3DS XL get a SNES-themed release in North America, but it feels like there is less of a chance of this happening now, and instead we will only see editions that showcase modern games. See Animal Crossing, Pokemon Let's Go Eevee and Pikachu during the actual Switch era. That does kind of suck, though, because it would have been incredible to see a promo with the Switch Online SNES games in some way, but Switch 2. Nintendo hasn't been known to use numbers in their console names. Handhelds were a different story with the 3DS line, though honestly that was slightly different because they wanted to emphasize the 3D effect that was now present on a DS form factor. Super Switch just feels more powerful than a Switch 2. Everyone does sequels with numbers, and sure, it illustrates the point, but we're also talking about the company who put new in front of the 3DS XL to denote it was an upgraded version instead of just going with a number. Mind you, 2 numbers in the name would look so bad. We've also got a track record of Nintendo loving the word Super. Super Mario Bros., Super Metroid, Super NES. The branding would have been strong, it would have been rooted in the history of Nintendo. Instead of Mario Kart 9, we could see Super Mario Kart make a return. In name only, the original Mario Kart release was named Super Mario Kart on the SNES, which wouldn't likely cause much confusion due to the age of the product. Super Zelda doesn't really roll off the tongue, but Super Splatoon sure sounds like fun, and it's an alliteration, which is lovely. Super Donkey Kong, honestly, I'd play that. And Super Wario Land sounds like an absolute blast. Also, just gonna throw it out there, they could bring back more nostalgia bait with the tagline, "Now you're playing with power. Super power." That was a part of the SNES marketing back in the day. Oh, 1989. How long ago you were. Nintendo loves their gimmicks. They should dive into it harder. Hell, I'd take the Switch Advance over the Switch 2, which was a major upgrade for the Game Boy lineup. So, the real question though is, will the Switch 2 be successful? It would be silly to sit here and say yes without seeing any other information on the console. They just made its first real debut today, but with the way that things are currently looking, I feel like being a silly Billy and saying yes, the Switch 2 will be a successful console launch for Nintendo. They have already given us a peek into the new Mario Kart game, which leads me to believe that we will see Mario Kart as a launch title, which is incredibly strong, and this gives us the system seller. Not to mention Metroid Prime 4 Beyond, which is going to kick some serious ass on this bad boy. I would be willing to wager that we will see at least 3 major launch titles for the Switch 2 from Nintendo, one of which maybe it's going to be a remaster of an early Switch game. Again, I have no concrete evidence of any of this. It's just a gut feeling, and I think they're going to do this right. They're going to actually do this launch right. We also will eventually see an exclusive Pokemon game for it. That likely won't work with the original Switch, so that's a huge system seller. Damn, if only they were smart enough to put Pokemon games on the Wii U, they may have actually had a chance at redeeming that console. With rumored upgrades to older games, that is much in line with the way PlayStation and Xbox have been doing things from generation to generation in the modern world of gaming, which is promising that we might be able to see boosts to frame rates on the Switch's Zelda titles, which were a slight victim to poor hardware. Speaking of hardware, we're also in a fantastic spot for computing power as a whole. Look at the modern age of what you could do on your phone. People are playing truly world-class games on their mobile devices, and the Switch is honestly exactly that. It's a mobile device. With 8 years of advancements in computing, it would not be surprising to see a 3 to 4 times performance boost on the handheld, while giving way to the same battery life that we all expect from it. That gives us competitive hardware for this generation. For a handheld, anyway. The branding. Honestly, as much as I may be disappointed that Nintendo didn't pay homage to its roots by calling it the Super Switch, naming the console Switch 2 does convey to consumers that this is a proper upgrade forward. Hey, Sony is still using the add a number to the consoles on each of their releases, which is understood by consumers, so it should fit well for Nintendo. Microsoft, yeah, let's not talk about their insane naming conventions for the series of Xbox devices, because their sales are nothing special to talk about. That, paired with really drilling into everybody that there is backwards compatibility and there will be exclusive games to the Switch 2, makes it more obvious to everybody that this is new. That gives us better branding and better potential for marketing. We're all familiar with Joy-Cons, so there's not going to be any Wii U gamepad nonsense here. It is an understood mechanic. We've also got the form factor. You can shove the Switch in your backpack to travel with it easily, play it on your commute, cozy up in front of the window watching the snowfall, or you can get hardcore about it and throw it up on the TV. This is a hybrid handheld console, and it is exactly what fans of Nintendo want to play with. The 3DS was incredibly popular, and that popularity moved into the Switch, and made it so much easier to consume Nintendo games on one console instead of needing 2. This gives us some comfort. I'm really looking forward to getting my Switch 2 on release, and having it feel like Christmas morning all over again when we received an N64 that year from Santa. That first time holding it in my hands will certainly be an incredible experience, and like my first unboxing of the Switch, it will definitely not be forgotten. So, what do you think about the name of the Switch 2? Let me know in the comments below.